I applaud TNA for, if nothing else, consistency. And what I mean is, last week in my review, I talked about the fact that if you wanted to know what the identity of TNA as a company was today, you looked at last week's show. You saw some good, you saw some bad, you saw some stupid. Well, by God, wouldn't you know, TNA did the exact same thing again this week. Some good, some bad, and some just outright freaking stupid. So Impact kicks off with your new TNA World Heavyweight Champion, Eric Young. Of course, in so many ways, a ripoff of what the WWE did with Daniel Bryan. But of course, done in a TNA way. Instead of spending a lot of time devoted to it and really creating a story, really creating a journey, really getting people emotionally invested into it like a WWE did with the Daniel Bryan from SummerSlam until WrestleMania 30, TNA basically hot-shotted something in one night and had Eric Young become the new TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and it fell kind of flat. It really did. So, not surprisingly, this whole opening segment, you've got Eric Young trying to sit there and talk about what this means to him, and that's all fine and good, and Eric Young was fine here. But for some reason, TNA now is bringing Dixie Carter back as an on-screen presence, as an on-screen performer. Why? Wasn't the whole purpose of that match at Lockdown, that Lethal Lockdown match, that main evented the show, was to determine who had control of wrestling operations, whether it was going to be Dixie Carter or MVP? And wouldn't you think if Dixie Carter's team was going to go on to lose the match, that she would sit there and be gone from television for a while, time to give you a break from that Dixie Carter character? No, TNA's decided a couple of weeks later, well, fuck it, we're bringing her back. She's the president of the company. And what is she doing? Absolutely nothing, other than trying to take credit for inventing a... This was just dumb on so many different fucking levels. Why is Eric Young's moment... Why is Eric Young's opportunity to establish himself as a TNA World Heavyweight Champion being overshadowed by that dumb ditz Dixie? Why? And what is Dixie's purpose for even being on television? It's like they're just throwing her in, cramming her in for the shit all fuck of it, and there's no real purpose or consequence to her being there. I've never seen a wrestling company in history overutilize special match stipulations more than TNA. I've also never seen a wrestling company overuse unannounced match stipulations more than TNA. A random-ass, unannounced, knockout street fight between Velvet Sky and Madison Rayne. Why? Now, mind you, this was supposed to be like a no-DQ street fight or whatever the fuck. A no-DQ match is the whole point. You got both Velvet and Angelina out there from the beautiful people. Why in the hell wouldn't they just wrestle Madison Rayne 2-on-1 the entire time? Well, the whole psychology of this is so typical TNA. You've got a no-DQ match, and you've got somebody trying to run interference on the outside. Why? It doesn't fucking matter. The referee can't disqualify you. They can't do that. Because it's a no-DQ match. It's a fucking street fight. So you could literally have 2-on-1 for the entire fucking match. So why in the bluest of blue fucks would referee distractions play any part in this match whatsoever? The whole psychology of TNA is so fucked up at times. And the whole psychology of how they bring apart about these overused, random-ass, unannounced special stipulations for matches is ridiculous. So you've got an unannounced street fight that goes a couple of minutes. The psychology in the match is very piss poor. And the beautiful people go together, and there seems to be an obsession now of pushing them in TNA. Uh-oh. One of the real examples of good on this week's show was the confrontation between MVP and Austin Aries. Austin Aries said exactly what he should be saying, basically after Lockdown. Why in the hell haven't I been used? I'm the greatest man that ever lived, and you're not putting me in the ring. You're not putting me on television. And MVP saying, you know what? No, screw you. You tried to screw me, so I'm going to screw with you now. Both guys were perfect here. And this builds up to a match between the two of them next week. Sometimes simple is very good. This was very simple. This made sense and was very good. Another thing that was really good on this week's show was the tag title match between the Bromans and the Wolves. And I know a lot of people are going to sit there and say, huh? How the hell was this any good? I'll tell you why it was good for me. Is because you've got the Wolves. You've got Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards. And then you've got these jobber jabronis, the freaking Bromans, as your tag champions. In a straight-up match, everybody knows that the Wolves would clean the clocks of the Bromans and win. I don't even think that's disputed. That's not even in question. We know who the far superior team is. So this has some old school kind of NWA to it in the sense that the faces keep looking strong and good and like they should be the champions, and yet the heels continue to find ways to retain their titles. In this case here, they lost via DQ but held on to their belts. That's how it should be done. You got to hopefully drag this out to Sacrifice, because at the same point in time, let's face it, even if you already hot-shotted it, which you kind of already did with having the Wolves win the belts once, but if you hot-shotted it right now already with the Wolves winning, you know, the Bromans chasing as heels, that really doesn't work because nobody's going to believe that the Bromans could actually legitimately beat the Wolves. And you really don't have any other tag teams in TNA, frankly, that could challenge the Wolves right now. So what good would it do at this particular moment, at this spot, to give the Wolves the belt and just be done with it? Because then what the fuck are they going to do? They're just going to be on TV. They're going to have the belts, but they're not going to really be doing anything with them. So that's why I'm okay with them dragging this out as long as they need to. Everybody knows the Wolves are going to get the belts at some point. You know, probably, I would assume, but knowing TNA, I can't take anything for granted. I would assume that will happen at Sacrifice, and that'll be a good moment then. I'm actually a fan of the way they are doing this feud. I'm actually a fan of the way that they're presenting the Wolves as the much better tag team, but they still keep finding ways to get you close, but not get you all the way there. An old school wrestling feel to this feud, and I actually like this. Anything involving Ethan Carter III and Rockstar Spud is probably going to rank very high on my good things list every single week involving Impact Wrestling. That's just the way it's going to be. These two guys are kind of that almost comedic relief heel team, and they are fucking terrific. They have great chemistry, and they are just incredibly fun, awesome, exciting, entertaining for me to watch. As a result, their handicap match, EC3 Rockstar Spud taking on Willow. This was fun. And I will say this. I wish they would just let Jeff Hardy be Willow and stop referencing that this is an alter ego of Jeff Hardy. Let Willow be Willow and let Willow be something different. A guy, frankly, that isn't concerned with winning or losing. He's about revenge and he's about vengeance and all this other crap. I think that makes for a more interesting, compelling character. Stop reminding us all the time this is Jeff Hardy. Anybody with a brain could clearly see this is Jeff Hardy, so why sit there and have to reference it? Why not try to sit there and make Willow a totally different entity? Why not make him a character all on his own? And even the result here, you know, you have Spud in there to eat the pinfall. Then as EC3 tries to take over and he sits there and tries to put Willow back out of action, here comes the returning Kurt Angle. So maybe Kurt Angle versus Ethan Carter III at Sacrifice, if that's where they're going. Again, I'm fine with it. They had a stretch run here where they actually had some good stuff on this week's show. Thank you, TNA, for actually having the King of the Night, Kenny King, make an appearance on this week's show. Thank you. That's how you actually try to make somebody a star, or at least try to, God forbid, actually get somebody over. Give them a mic, give them TV time, do whatever the fuck you need to do. Just get them on TV. You didn't do it last week. At least you did it here. I actually like earlier on in the night how they ran this video package featuring their X Division champion, Sonata. I thought that was actually pretty cool. They were tying it into Great Muta, and they were talking about Sonata and his work ethic and what he was trying to do and trying to accomplish. But wouldn't you know, something in that package caught me completely off fucking guard. I didn't know he was about to have a best out of 3 falls X Division title tournament, if you will, with the Tigre Uno. I didn't know they were going to have a best out of 3 competition. I was even more astonished to find out that once the actual match between Tigre Uno and Sonata started, that apparently they had already had a match and this tournament was already underway. Maybe I missed something, or maybe TNA did a piss poor job of telling me, or maybe TNA just pulled the stipulation randomly out of their fucking asses. Because I sure the fuck can't remember it. I didn't realize that it was already 1-0 Sonata. Had no clue. Typical TNA. Throw some random shit in there involving the X Division, and then give the X Division match 4 minutes. So let me get this straight. You've got Dixie Carter talking about inventing beards and a bunch of stupid crap. You've got random knockout street fights with poor match psychology and an overwhelming obsession with the beautiful people. And you've got a X Division match that is a best out of 3 tournament. Even though I didn't even know that they had it, we're already into match number 2 and the match gets 4 minutes. You know what that means. Uh-oh. You know what frustrates me with TNA? Again, I talk about the last week's show and again this week's show, talking about it perfectly represents and epitomizes what TNA is. Some good, some bad, some incredibly stupid. What really bothers me about it, though, is the fact that sometimes they give you some good and they give you some really good. And you sit there and you say to yourself, why can't they give us more of this? Why can't they give us more of this type of presentation? Why can't they give us more of this in their product? God, it would make things so much better. And this Bobby Roode Open Challenge Tables match is an example of that. Bully Ray recruits Gunner to go after Bobby Roode, and they have a tables match, and that's fine. James Storm comes out, gets involved. You sit there and you continue the feud between James Storm and Gunner. You have Bobby Roode look impressive. You have Bobby Roode look like he's not scared. You have Bobby Roode look like an aggressive heel, something that we lack far too much in professional wrestling today. And you also maybe potentially planted the seed for what I really hope for, along with James Storm and Gunner at Sacrifice, and Bully Ray and Bobby Roode in a tables match maybe at Sacrifice. Maybe down the road you have planted the seed since Bobby Roode is heel and James Storm is heel. Ta-da! Maybe we reunite Beer Money. We make them a heel tag team. We send them at the freaking Wolves. And you get that as your tag title match at Slammiversary. Yeah, I said Slammiversary. It could be Slammiversary too. The bottom line is it doesn't fucking matter. I'm sure a lot of you could fap to the thought of Beer Money versus the Wolves for the tag titles at Slammiversary. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? So like I said, when it comes to TNA, you get good, you get bad, you get stupid. But then you get the main event here. And I guess ultimately it was that time of month. And no, I'm not referring to Dixie Carter or the Knockouts. I guess it was that time of fucking month for TNA to throw out yet another stupid-ass Monsters Ball match featuring Abyss. It literally has gotten to the point where every freaking month they are having some type of Monsters Ball match involving Abyss. This is ridiculous. This undercuts the meaning and importance of the stipulation of the fucking match if you have it all the damn time. If it's a Monsters Ball match once a month, it's not so much a monster, it's more like a little gremlin. This is ridiculous. Now help me understand this too when we talk about the stupidity that is fucking TNA. Several months back, if I remember correctly, part of the whole problem with AJ Styles winning the TNA World Heavyweight Championship was the fact that he wasn't under contract and he could fucking leave the company like that. And Dixie Carter was obsessed with getting that belt off of him. And then she was obsessed with getting her own guy and her own champion, somebody that she knew was going to be there, unlike an AJ Styles. And when AJ Styles came back with his belt to face Magnus with his belt, she made sure that Magnus ended up keeping the title and that he was the real champion. So now a few months later, we fast forward now, and Abyss, who is somebody that, mind you, Magnus said, so these dipshits involved with TNA actually wrote this in. We're not making this up. We're not the idiots that decided to use this. The TNA people, the TNA creative team, they're the fucking morons that decided to sit there and say, well, Abyss isn't actually a part of the TNA Impact roster. He's just there to help Magnus. And his only business there is Magnus. So even though he's still listed as the television champion, a belt they don't even utilize anymore, by the way, on the ImpactWrestling.com website, and even though he's still listed on the actual fucking roster itself, on the ImpactWrestling.com website, again, I'm not making this shit up, they sit there and still have him in these freaking matches, and they still are sitting there trying to say that he's not a part of the actual wrestling roster. Well, what the fuck is it? Why would Magnus say that stupid shit if he's still listed as a television champion on the website, if he's still listed as an active member of the roster on the fucking website? And again, why in the hell would Eric Young or anybody else have any booking power when it comes to putting Abyss in, of all things, a fucking world title match in a Monsters Ball match? This makes absolutely no sense. This is exactly why TNA is perpetually stuck in stupid. Period. So, a few months ago, the whole storyline of that company revolved around the fact that AJ Styles wasn't under contract and he could leave with the title, and that was a whole obsession with getting the fucking belt off of him. Now we're going to willy-nilly, openly, and willingly book a guy who's not a member of the actual roster in a freaking world title match. So if he wins the fucking world title, then what the hell happens? You could, again, have somebody leave the company with the world title that wasn't actually on the Impact roster. Not to mention the fact, if you think about it from a legal standpoint, You know, that would open some serious liability concerns. Somebody that's not actually on the Impact Wrestling roster wrestling in an Impact Wrestling ring. That would be like me going in there wrestling somebody like a Davey Richards or an Eddie Edwards and not being a contracted wrestler. I highly doubt TNA would allow that to fly, and rightfully so, for so many different fucking reasons. One of the biggest ones is to prevent any potential lawsuits from any injuries that would come from my non-wrestling ass getting in the ring with somebody like a Davey Richards or an Eddie Edwards. Not only would they run circles around me, they probably would hurt me whether they intended to or not. And TNA, being a smart wrestling company, or at least you would hope so, would probably not put me in that situation because they would not want the liability that would come along with it. But knowing TNA, they probably fucking would because they would think that was some incredibly great, stupid shit. And this just all points to one thing. Instead of taking months and devoting yourself to building interest and intrigue into a story and into a character like the WWE did with Daniel Bryan, TNA decided to hotshot shit basically in 1 week last week and make Eric Young their new TNA World Heavyweight Champion on the heels of what had happened the previous Sunday at WrestleMania 30 with Danny Bryan. You've got randomly announced match stipulations. You've got the beautiful people being featured in a very prominent fashion and an overwhelming obsession with it. You've got a bunch of other stupid shit featured in the show. You've got Abyss being featured in a main event spot, a stupid fucking Monsters Ball match, which is the first time we've seen it since the last time we've seen it, which was, I believe, last month. And all of this disregard for just basic storyline 101 crap can only lead you to one conclusion, is that not only is Vince Russo involved with the creative process in TNA, he is incredibly involved with the TNA creative process at this time. This show right here had all types of Vince Russo fingerprints all fucking over it. And that comes with the good, that comes with the bad, and most importantly of all, it comes with the stupid. Hot-shotting to a freaking Daniel Bryan, poor man's ripoff, and Eric Young. Hot-shotting to this. A fucking match between him and Abyss, a guy who's not even supposed to be allegedly on the Impact Wrestling roster, even though he's the TV champion according to the website, and he's also a member of the roster according to that same website. We're going to disregard that logic. We're going to disregard common sense. We're going to disregard what your former world champion said just a couple of weeks ago about when Magnus said that Abyss was not part of the roster and he was only there at Magnus's bidding. Now we're going to openly book him in a fucking World Heavyweight Championship match where if he wins, you can have a non-contracted TNA wrestler holding your World fucking Championship. If that doesn't scream Vince Russo, I don't know what the fuck does. And I just fear that things are only going to go downhill from here. I hope I'm wrong, but the last 2 weeks have given me a clear indication that it's going to be one of those years for TNA. One of those years. Oh, and mind you, by the way, again, more shit that's being hot-shotted for television. Screw the pay-per-view. Yet another thing that clearly indicates that Vince Russo is back in the fold. How has this approach worked for television ratings in recent years? How did the ratings go for this week's show without any major sports competition going head-to-head? Oh, that's right. TNA saw, what, a 29% drop in ratings? They barely had 1 million viewers? Why in the fuck is this company so obsessed with bringing Vince Russo back into the fold in any way, shape, or form? Why do people like Dave Lagana and Conway still have freaking jobs there? Why does Gaburik, or whatever the fuck, Gaburik, whatever the hell his name, why is he in charge of creative? Clearly, it's not working for TNA. And clearly the direction that it looks like they're about to head down isn't a very good one.